So today is the Chapter 7 review. This is for our test. The first thing that you guys need to be good at is identifying and defining the variable. So you guys need to get good at being able to read a word problem, understand what we are trying to find out, and define it, aka telling us this is our variable, for example, x, and it means this. So let's look at this first problem. 2 less than 1/3 of the points the Cubs scored. So I want you to identify the variable. Read this and identify the variable. Oswaldo, what's the variable? She said C for the Cubs. Yes, so it is the points the Cubs scored. And she said she's going to make it C. Exactly. Now, how did we know that was the variable, Rocco?
Because it says the Cubs scored.
It says the Cubs scored, but why did we know that that was the variable, Malia? What the Cubs scored is unknown. So if it said the Cubs scored 17 points, then that wouldn't be our variable because it's not the unknown. What about this one? Try to think of the variable for this one. Elsie, so what is the variable here?
D equals D Miss D is H.
Yeah, perfect. Oops, I'm drawing over it. D is equal to Miss Diaz's H. Exactly. Do I have to use the letters D, C, like for that? No.
Wait, isn't it half of your
It's helpful because it helps us remind us what we're talking about. But you could use X, Y, Z. Now Ben said, wait, isn't it half of Diaz's age? Why is it not? Why is that not the variable? Why, Hannah?
Because half is a number.
Half is a number. A variable is just a letter, symbol, anything like that. However, the half does play into part. So this, let's see. Now we also need to solve the equation. First, I want to go back to this original one. 2/3 less than 1/3 of the points the Cubs scored. We've already identified our variable, C. What does this word of tend to mean in math? What does of tend to mean, Michelle? It means multiply. And so we've got 1/3 multiply C, right? So that means we would have 1/3 times C. Then we have this 2 less. What do we do with that? What does that less mean? What does it mean, Adriana? Yeah, it means subtraction. Awesome. But what's the other key word that we see here? What is the other key word, Daniel? Less than. So where does it go? Where does it go, Daniel? After our variable. So that's really important that you know the less thans. So here's this one. 1 less than half of Miss Diaz's age. Who can tell me the whole equation, Ben?
So Miss Diaz's age, D. Wait.
So we got D for Miss Diaz's age.
D minus 1.
D minus 1.
Divided by 1/2.
And the whole thing divided by, so we're gonna, this thing divided by 1/2. So no.
D divided by
No, let's look again. Elsie.
D divided by 2 minus 1.
D divided by 2 minus 1. I don't even need the parentheses because it still follows PEMDAS.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Here's how else you could write it. There's several ways. Remember when we have division, you could write it as 1/2 D. You could write that as D over 2. You could write that as D divided by 2. All 3 of these are completely valid ways to write the same problem. Now, let's look at this. We've already written the equation, but now we have an answer for it. We know that 1 less than half of Miss Diaz's age is 11. So I have my equation. You can pick your equation. What do we know it's equal to then? What is it equal to, Lucy? What are the equations equal to? It is 1 less than half of Miss Diaz's age, and we know that that's going to be 11, because that's what it says here, is 11, and is means equal. So you have any of these equations that you can use, any of these equations. Now they've got an equal sign, so they're equations. And I want you to solve solve by showing your work too. So what do we have as an answer then, Hannah? What'd you get? Hannah got 24. Perfect. So let's look if we showed our work. When we show our work, what's important is we do reverse PEMDAS. What's important when we show our work is we do reverse PEMDAS. To get an answer, we follow PEMDAS, right? That makes sense. To get an answer, we follow PEMDAS. We already have our answer. We already have our equals to. So we have to follow reverse PEMDAS. If we're following reverse PEMDAS, what step comes first? Rafi. Addition or subtraction. Excellent. We're going backwards. So we add 1. We add 1. And what we do to one side? Perfect. You see how we get that 1 equals 1? Excellent. Those all go away. Then we're left with our d divided by 2 in any way that it looks at it. And this becomes 12. So I like to look at it like this. I say d over 2 equals 12. That's how it looks. If it's d divided by 2, I'm going to multiply it by 2. I'm going to multiply by 2. Those go away, and I'm left with d is equal to 24. So you can easily mess up this problem if you accidentally did subtraction first here, or if you did subtraction, or if you did the addition of PEMDAS after you already multiplied. When we are solving an equation, when we have the equals to a number, we're doing reverse PEMDAS. So these are the 3 steps you're going to need to do on your test. Make sure you know this. You're going to need to define the variable, write your equation, and solve by showing work. And what we just did was showing our work. I don't want to see, oh, I know that times 5 is this. Because in future stuff, you're not going to be able to. Do you happen to know what 625 divided by 25 is?
Yes. 17.
So it is not 17. So try it with this problem. George and Michael have 386 Yu-Gi-Oh cards total. If George has 221 trading cards, how many does Michael have? So you need those 3 steps. You need to define the variable, write the equation, and solve by showing work. Now the important part about writing an equation is you need to have a number, an operation. A variable is going to be equal to a number. If you write your equation that doesn't look like this, then it's not going to be right. Yes, there are different ways to write it, but that does not qualify as an equation. That does not qualify as an equation. If you wrote it with your being equal to a variable, that is not an equation. That's just an answer. So we have to actually write equations. So, Daniel, first of all, what is our variable? Let's identify it. Perfect. How many cards does Michael have? So, let's say that that is X, right? We don't care. We say it's X. Let's write our equation then. What is your equation, Daniel?
386 minus x equals 221.
Excellent. So 386 minus x is equal to 221. So we have our number, operation, variable. Remember, they can come in any order. And then we have another number. Yes, Romario? So if you wrote it as 386 minus 221 equals some number, you are wrong. How did you write it then, Romario? How did you write it?
I did 221 plus x equals 387.
Perfect. That's another way that you could write this problem. These are the same things. So let's look at them actually. We're going to go with this together. So we've got 386 minus x equals 221. And we have let's just do it like this. 221 plus x equals 386. So we're going to look at these 2 problems. And I'm going to show you why we know that they are the same. So in this case, Romario's might actually be easier to solve. But either way works. Let's watch. Let's solve for Mario's first. Here's 221. What do I want to do? What is it called how I solve? Who can tell me what it's called when I solve? Rafi, do you know what it's called when I do it? Isolating the variable, yes. So we want to get it down to an x equals. Always in the end, you want an x equals. Now, for the bottom one, Romario's equation, what is the first step that we are going to do for Romario's equation? What is it? Let's see. Lucy. Perfect. So she subtracted 221 on each side because that isolated our x. That got rid of our 221. We are now left with x equals 386 minus 221. We get 165. Now, Daniel's equation was a little harder just because you have to use one deeper form of thought for this. But we follow the same steps. Daniel, what is the first step that you do to solve yours? Exactly. So how do we isolate it? We do that on both sides. Excellent. So we subtract 386 from both sides. Now that's gone. Oops, sorry.
For both of them, can't you just...
So we subtract 386 from both sides. It gets a little harder because now we've got a number minus a bigger number, so we're going to end in our negatives. But also, look, we have a negative x. So we're going to have to deal with that. So watch. 221 minus 386. We are going to get negative 165 as our answer. But we have a negative x as our answer. Do you see how we have that negative x because you include that operation?
Yeah.
We want to get rid of the negatives for both. What happens if I multiplied negative x by negative 1? What's a negative times a negative? A positive. So if I multiply this side by negative 1, I do the same to the other side, negative 1. Negative 1 times negative x just gets our positive x. Negative 1 times negative 165 just gets me a positive 165. And yet again, I have that same answer. Now, Daniel's way was much harder, but I just liked that I was able to show you the negative equals negative. You can just immediately switch them both to positive. Here's actually a fun fact with this. If I have negative x equals 165, that's the same as x equals negative 165. If I have negative y equals negative 3, that's the same as y equals 3. If you don't believe me, plug in the numbers and try. If you don't believe me, plug in the numbers and try. But now, let's look at this next problem. JD is 72 inches tall, which is 4 inches taller than Elliot. How tall is Elliot? This should be easy. What is the variable that we are trying to identify, Liam?
Ellie's height.
Perfect. We are trying to identify it. Let's say it's E. So E is Elliot's height. We know E is Elliot's height. Now we need an equation. We need an equation. So Rafi said 72 minus E equals 4. I just want to point this out. Look at this. 72 minus 4 equals E. Notice they just swapped places. So it's not that hard to write it like this. It's not that hard. 72 minus E equals 4. 72 minus E equals 4. What other way could we write it?
E plus 4 equals 72.
E plus 4 equals 72. Another way to write it. Same way to write, or there's different ways you're going to get the same answer. The easier one is this one. And the way that you know it is because to get rid of this, what's the operation I have in front of my variable? What's the operation I have in front of the variable for the first one, Rocco? In front of the top variable. It's just addition. What's the operation I have in front of the other variable in the other problem, Hannah? Subtraction. So I'd end up with a negative variable, and negative variables are just hard to deal with. Try to avoid those. So, now we need to solve the problem. Now we need to solve it. How do I do that, Daniel?
You subtract 4 from 4 and then 4 from
Excellent. Minus 4 on both sides. This goes away. I'm left with E is equal to 68 inches. Excellent. Try to avoid having a negative in front of your variable just because it makes it harder. Just makes it harder. It's not impossible, just makes it harder. Now, let's try this one. Miss Diaz's students studied 1/2500th hours on average for the Chapter 7 test. I can only hope. This was half an hour or 5/10 an hour less than they studied for the Chapter 6 test. How long did they study for the Chapter 6 test? Whenever we have that question mark, we already know what our variable is. So, let's see. Alinza, what is our variable? Perfect. So, it's how long they studied for the Chapter 6 test. So, let's just call that variable because I don't like dealing with variables that look like numbers. Also, try to avoid those. I'm just going to call it x. So, we've already defined our variable. I want you to write your equation and then solve it. Write your equation and solve it. So I got a 0.5 plus x equals 125. But let's break this down. I'm going to show you. Here's our Chapter 7 test. Here's our Chapter 6 test. Which test did they study for longer? Which test did they study for longer? Lucy. Chapter 6 test. So we know our Chapter 6 has to be longer. How long did they study for that Chapter 7 test, Hannah? 1/2500ths of an hour. So we know that they studied longer for our Chapter 6 test. So our end answer has to be bigger than 125. Our end answer has to be bigger than 125. So what is our answer going to... Well, give me an equation, Hannah.
I did 1.25 minus x equals 50.
She said 1.25 minus x equals 0.5. What do we think? No, we're almost there, though. We are almost there. What do we have, Elsie?
I got your x.
X minus 1.25 equals 7.5.
So, not that one. Let's see. What do you have, Michelle?
X minus 5 equals 1.25.
Yes. This is correct. This is correct. Because our unknown is the Chapter 6. Our unknown is the Chapter 6. Our known is the Chapter 7. So we know this has to be bigger. We know it has to be bigger. If we're taking something away, it makes it bigger. Do I have a comment on this, Ben, and then Gore?
Wait, can you go back to the other one?
We will do it in a second.
Actually, it's a comment.
I did 1.25 if I was Laura.
Yes, he did 1.25 plus 0.5 equals x. But that's not an equation. That's not an equation. That's an answer. So let's look. Here, we need to solve. We've already done this. What we do, we have a positive x, so we're also in the good. Here, we have a negative 0.5. We have a negative 5/10. So we do the opposite. We add it to both sides. We add it to both sides. This one goes away, and this one makes it x equals 1.75. And doesn't that confirm what we know? Chapter 6 is more time than Chapter 7? Yes, it confirms what we know, that Chapter 7 is less than Chapter 6. Also, we see this. Chapter 7. Well, that's not it. But we see that less than. Okay, try this one. It was on your homework. North Carolina has 14 less electoral votes than Florida. They have 29 votes in total. They is Florida. How many votes? Wait, they is North Carolina? I think. Hold on. Thank you, Daniel. Yes, both of them is they. They have 29 votes total. So how many does Florida have? What is our variable? Very easy. What is our variable? What is our variable, Emerson? What don't we know? Excellent. How many does Florida have? So we'll just say that is F. Perfect. We need an equation that has a number operation variable on one side and an equal sign and then a number on the other side. Okay. I'm going to call on Gloria to give us her equation. Gloria says 14 plus F equals 29. Do we agree?
Yes.
Yes. Once again, it could also be written F plus 14 equals 29. They are the same thing. Addition, same thing. So the way we solve, we have a positive 14 to get rid of that. Minus 14 on each side. That goes away. 29 minus 14, we get F equals 15. Excellent. So, the average lifespan of a horse is 40 years, which is 5 times longer than the average lifespan of a guinea pig. What do you think we're looking for here? What do you think we're looking for here, Anita? Perfect. Lifespan of a guinea pig. We'll call that G. So, write your equation and solve. Malia, what's your equation? 5G equals 40. Excellent. 5 times G is 40. 5 times G is 40. So how would I go about solving this problem, Gore? Perfect. So we divide each side by 5. What is 5 over 5, Carmen?
25.
5 divided by 5. 1. It goes away. We are left with G. 40 divided by 5 is, what do we have? What do we get, Daniel? 8. So we get G equals 8. Not that hard. So, Lady On is saving an equal amount of money each week for 4 weeks to buy a video game for $52. What is the variable? What are we trying to find here? What is the variable and what are we trying to find? Andrew? Yeah, we're trying to find how the video game for $52. So what specifically is that called, Hannah?
Sorry.
Perfect. So the unknown is how much money she saves each week. We'll call that M. Actually, to be fun, we'll call that $sign. So now I'm going to call on Carmen for the equation. So Carmen was right. She said 52 divided by 4, but we have to write it as the equation form. So we have 4 because she had 4 weeks. We don't know how much money she had each week, but we know that it is $52. So as Carmen was saying, she knows that we're going to divide each side by 4. We're going to divide each side by 4. So Jaden, what do we get as our answer? 13. I don't know why my pen is not working so well. 13. So, 1/3 of a bird's eggs hatched. If 2 eggs hatched, how many eggs did the bird lay? So we already know what our variable is. What is our unknown, Adriana?
The unknown is how many eggs the bird.
Perfect. How many eggs the bird lay? Let's say that's E. Now, I want you guys to come up with your equation. So he says 2 divided by 1/3. I'm going to write that in a way you can understand. 2 divided by 1/3 equals E. Now, there's several problems with this besides the fact that it's not right. But, once again, it's not an equation. It's not an equation. So, let's see. I want an equation from Rocco.
Okay, so the equation is E. Wait, hold on, I just had it. I have
E divided by 1/3 equals 2. E divided by 1/3 equals 2. Yes, that. So Daniel said E over 3 equals 2. Again, same way to write it because this means divide and it's technically being divided into 3 different groups, which is the same as the keep, change, flip. Rocco's wrong, and here's the reason. If we did keep, change, flip, we'd get E times 3 equals 2. We'd get E times 3 equals 2. Rocco's equation is not right. Daniel's is. Here's how we know that Daniel's is right. It says 1/3 of 1/3 times a bird's eggs. That's E hatched. And then 2, so we know that 2 hatched. Same thing. Exactly. Great catch on Lucy. Great equation from Daniel. So now let's solve that. We have 1/3 E equals 2. That's the same as E over 3 equals 2. So Jasmine, how do I solve this? So, as you said, we do the inverse of divide, which is multiply. We multiply each side, correct? Correct. Those go away. We get E is equal to 6. A model plane is 1/48th the size of the actual plane. If the model plane is 28 inches long, how long is the actual plane? I think we should be good at this so far. So let's see. Nathan, what is the variable we're looking for? Which means P is for what? So exactly. The length of the actual plane. So P equals the plane's length. So P is the plane's length. The actual plane, not the model plane. Now you make your equation. Andrew got the equation like this. He said that he knows there's a model plane is equal to 1/48th of the actual plane's height. And he knows that model plane is 28 inches. So he knows that 28 inches is 1/48th of the plane. So how would I go about solving that? I want to call on Liam. How would I go about solving that? So we have this 1/48th. What is it that we're always doing? What is it that we're always doing, that step? When we've got addition in the problem, so we subtract. When we've got division, we multiply. We are doing the what, Hannah?
We are reciprocal.
We're doing the inverse, the reciprocal. So what, Liam, is the reciprocal of 1/48th? What's the reciprocal, the reciprocal? Perfect. 48 over 1. So we do that same to both sides. 1/48, we cross cancel those. We're left with P equals. Then we've got 48 times 28. Lucy, what is that? 1,744. So I checked on my calculator, and it's actually 1,344. I'm going to check over here on the side because I want to test it. I checked here. It's 1,344. Excellent. Your homework is to study for the Chapter 7 test. And you also have to do page 571, which is the crossword puzzle. It's essentially 1 free point if you do it.